November 1st, 1943, 23:45 hours. Off the coast of Bougainville, Solomon Islands. The sea is a plate of black ink under a lid of low cloud. No moon, the only light comes from the faint, phosphorescent curl of wake behind the USS Conley, a Gleaves-class destroyer cutting through the warm Pacific night at a cautious 15 knots. Aboard the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Frederick Moosbrugger feels the familiar, low-grade tremor of the deck plates under his shoes. It's not from the engines, it's from the tension of every man aboard. You can smell it, a mix of stale coffee, ozone from the radar sets, and cold sweat. All eyes are locked on the darkened silhouette of the transport ship ahead, the USS President Hayes. But they're not watching for enemy ships. Not yet. They're waiting for the cargo. A low whistle carries across the water, a signal. On the deck of the Hayes, silhouettes begin to move. Not the purposeful strides of sailors, but the clumsy, heaving labor of men handling dead weight. They're not loading weapons or ammunition. They're launching ghosts. Over the side go dozens of rafts, each one carrying a squad of lifeless, slumped figures. In the darkness, they look exactly like Marines in full combat gear. These are the dummies, stuffed uniforms, crude rubber heads, anchored in place. The current, carefully calculated by Navy hydrographers, now takes hold. A phantom invasion force begins its silent, creeping drift toward the black mass of Bougainville's shoreline, just 2 miles away. On the Conway, a radio operator keys his microphone. His voice is calm, deliberate, dripping with false urgency. Blue Beach, this is Shore Party 6. Heavy fire on the left flank. Request immediate naval gunfire support. Grid coordinate Echo 7. He releases the key. Static hisses back. The message, like all others this hour, is broadcast in the clear. No encryption. It's meant to be heard. Miles away, in a tangled web of Japanese listening posts dug into the Bougainville jungle, a radio man jerks upright, headphones clamping his ears. His pencil flies across the paper, transcribing the panicked English. He doesn't hear the artifice. He hears the opening shots of an American landing. He signals his superior. The report races up the chain. The enemy is here. They are coming ashore at Cape Torokina Lagoon. But there are no landing craft. There are no Marines. There is only the soft lap of water against empty rafts and the brilliant, terrifying lie crackling through the darkness. The entire might of the Japanese 8th Fleet anchored at Rabaul is about to be lured into a fight for an island the United States never intended to take.
0700 hours. Empress, Augusta Bay. 30 miles south of the drifting dummies, the real invasion churns the sea into a frothing, chaotic soup. Here, in the broad embrace of Empress, Augusta Bay, the water is alive with the grinding of LST hulls on sand, the thunderous shriek of naval artillery, and the raw, shouting voices of thousands of United States Marines. This is Cape Torokina, the real beachhead. The air tastes of cordite and wet jungle. Landing craft ramps slam down into chest-deep water, and the 3rd Marine Division surges forward, legs churning through the surf toward a shoreline obscured by smoke and palm trees, shattered by high explosives. They expect a fury of defensive fire. They've been told the Japanese 17th Army is dug in here, waiting. But the resistance is scattered, confused. Sporadic machine gun nests crackle and the mortars thump in the hinterlands, but it's not the coordinated, hellish wall of steel they'd braced for. Marines exchange bewildered glances as they scramble up the beach. They've trained for Tarawa-level slaughter. This feels different. High above on the bridge of the amphibious command ship, Vice Admiral Wilkinson and General Vandegrift monitored the reports flooding in. The initial waves are ashore. The perimeter is expanding. Casualties are lighter than the most optimistic projections. A staff officer, clutching a fresh decode from the radio room, approaches. His face is a mask of controlled disbelief.
Sir, Intercepts from Rabaul. The Japanese command is ordering the fleet to sortie. But their vector, they're not heading for us. He points a finger north, up the coast. They're rallying to Torokina. They're talking about containing the main landing force. A slow, grim smile touches the Admiral's lips. Operation Cherry Blossom was a gamble, a high-speed dash into the heart of the Solomon Islands to carve an airfield out of Japanese-held territory. But the supporting deception, codenamed Operation Decoy, was the razor's edge. They needed the Japanese to look away, just for a few critical hours. And the enemy was not just looking away. They were committing their entire naval response to a stretch of beach occupied by nothing but soggy, headless sacks of straw. Every Japanese battery turned toward the Phantom invasion was a battery not shelling Cape Torokina. Every Zero scrambled to strafe empty rafts was a Zero not diving on the vulnerable transports. But the clock is ticking. Deceptions are fragile. They shatter the moment an enemy scout plane passes over the real beachhead or a patrol stumbles upon the truth. The Japanese fleet, led by the heavy cruisers Myoko and Haguro, is now steaming at full battle speed, not to repel the real invasion, but to crush an imaginary one. The trap is set, but the jaws are about to close on the wrong target. And when they snap shut on empty ocean, what happens next?
0240 hours, the bridge of the Japanese cruiser Myoko. Vice Admiral Sentaro Omori stands rigid on the vibrating bridge of his flagship, the cold porcelain of his command cup held tightly. Below decks, the great show turbines drive 80,000 tons of warship through the black water at a relentless 32 knots. The entire Cruiser Division 5 is with him. Haguro, the light cruisers Sendai, Agano, and a screen of 6 destroyers, a formidable Sentai, a hammer-blow force. His mission is clear, ordained by the desperate, static-filled reports from the Bougainville garrison. The Americans are landing in force at Torokina Lagoon. He must reach the transport area and sink the invasion fleet before it can unload. But the reports, they are strange, fragmentary. The shore batteries speak of shadows on the water and enemy movement in the mangroves. Radio intercepts blare American distress calls and calls for fire support, but they lack the specific, chaotic texture of a real crumbling beachhead. There is no roar of massed engines, no silhouette of troop ships against the horizon. Omori's chief of staff, Captain Kameto, voices the gnawing doubt quietly. The radio traffic continues, Admiral, but our float planes report difficulty in visual confirmation due to weather and enemy air patrols. Omori dismisses it. The Americans are clever, using the night and the weather as a cloak. Their very silence on the approach is proof of their audacity. He will not be the admiral who hesitated while the enemy secured a foothold. Maintain course and speed, he barks. Prepare the bombardment batteries for shoreline targets. Meanwhile, to the south, the real American invasion fleet is a hive of vulnerable, vital activity. Transports are half-emptied, their guts spilled onto Cape Torokina. They are the perfect target. But Omori's lookouts are trained north, their long glasses sweeping the empty sea where the dummy rafts had already sunk or drifted out to sea. And then, at 0320, contact. The radar operator on the USS Foot, part of the American deception and mining force lingering near the Phantom beachhead, sees the blips. Multiple contacts bearing 340, range 22,000 yards, closing fast. This is the moment Captain Arleigh Burke, commanding the destroyer screen for the minelayers, has waited for. His orders are not to win a gunnery duel with heavy cruisers. His orders are to sell the lie, to make Omori believe he has found the invasion screen. Burke's force, a handful of destroyers, turns not away, but toward the Japanese Leviathans. They make radar contact. They launch a spread of torpedoes from extreme range. They illuminate with star shell and open with their 5-inch guns. It's a mosquito biting a bull. But in the blinding flash of gunfire and the streaking trails of torpedoes, Omori's certainty solidifies into steel. Here is the enemy screen. The transports must be just behind them. The night erupts. The Japanese fleet wheels, its precise formation dissolving as it maneuvers to comb torpedo wakes and bring its overwhelming broadsides to bear. Searchlight beams, sharp as samurai swords, slice the darkness, momentarily catching the sleek, fleeing shapes of Burke's destroyers. The thunder of 8-inch guns from Miyoko and Haguro rolls across the ocean like continuous thunder, but their high-explosive shells are aimed at ghosts, tearing up empty ocean where the transports should be. The American mine layers, their deadly work already done, slip away into the darkness. They have sown their invisible garden of contact mines directly in the path Omori's fleet would use to exit the bay after its victory. The admiral is fully engaged, with his entire might committed to a furious battle against a shadow. He is fighting the wrong fight with all his strength, and with every turn, every evasive maneuver, his fleet is being herded unknowingly toward a field of submerged, silent death.
04:55 hours, Empress Augusta Bay, aboard the USS Spence. The storm of Japanese steel has passed, not over Cape Torokina, but over 30 miles of empty ocean. On the bridges of American destroyers like the Spence, Thatcher, and Converse, officers watch the distant, malignant flicker of gunfire on the northern horizon. It is a phantom battle, a thunderstorm they can see but cannot feel. The silence on their own beachhead is now more profound than any noise. The Marines ashore have clawed out a defensive perimeter, their foxholes facing a jungle that remains ominously quiet. The Japanese garrison, fixated on the north, has left the front door wide open. But for Admiral Omori, the battle is real, costly, and deeply confusing. His heavy cruisers have expended hundreds of main battery shells at fleeting radar ghosts. His destroyers, the Hatsukaze and Shiratsuyu, have tangled in the darkness with Arleigh Burke's elusive tin cans, suffering minor damage. The tactical picture is a nightmare of misidentification and friendly fire. And the chaotic turns to avoid American torpedoes, most of which run harmlessly past, the Japanese cruiser Sendai and destroyer Samidare collide in a shriek of tearing metal. The fleet's formation, a thing of precise beauty hours before, is now a scattered, wounded beast. And then comes the chilling, quiet punctuation to the night's farce. As Omori, frustrated and sensing the trap, finally orders a withdrawal to the north to reassemble, his lead ship meets the unseen harvest. A low, muffled crump vibrates through the hull of the destroyer Hatsukaze. Then another. The sea erupts beside her. She has found the minefield laid by the USS Shannon and Tracy. The explosions are not the violent geysers of shellfire, but deadlier, more intimate ruptures from below. Her hull is gutted. She loses power, begins to list, a sitting duck as dawn's first gray light bleeds into the sky. Omori's realization is not instant, but it is devastating. The invasion screen he fought was a light, fast, distracting force. The complete absence of troop transports, the sheer emptiness of the sea where the American beachhead should have been, the radio traffic from Bougainville now sounds tinny and false in his memory. He wasn't thwarting a landing. He was performing for an audience, dancing to a tune called by his enemy. His mighty Sentai, tasked with defending the Empire's perimeter, has spent its fury attacking a mirage and blundering into a minefield. The cost? A destroyer sinking, 2 cruisers and a destroyer damaged, all for zero strategic gain. Back at Cape Torokina, the first gray dawn reveals the truth. Bulldozers are already growling, clearing land for the airstrip that will become Torokina Field. Supplies pile up on the beach. The Marines, expecting a ferocious counterattack at first light, merely receive sporadic sniper fire.
The Japanese 17th Army is not launching a coordinated assault because its attention and the reinforcing naval power it depended on is still focused on a stretch of beach to the north, littered with the sodden, ruptured remains of dummy rafts. Omori turns his battered fleet toward Rabaul, his mission a catastrophic failure. But for the men on Bougainville, the most disorienting psychological blow is yet to land. They are still braced, muscles taut and weapons manned, for the main American assault. They are waiting for an invasion that has already happened behind them.
Dawn, November 2nd. Japanese command bunker, Bougainville. The air in the bunker is thick with the smell of damp earth, sweat, and stale rice. Colonel Isashi Magata, commander of the sector encompassing Torokina Lagoon, studies the map under the flicker of a kerosene lamp. His eyes are raw from lack of sleep, his ears still ringing from the distant, night-long thunder of naval artillery. His navy, he believed, savaging the American landing fleet. Field telephone reports trickle in, each one layering confusion upon confusion. Forward patrols reached the lagoon shoreline at first light. No enemy forces detected. Only debris. What debris? Magata's voice is a low rasp. Wooden rafts, sir. Empty. Some crude dummies in uniform. Life preservers. The silence that follows is punctuated only by the static from a radio in the corner. The staff officers avoid each other's eyes. Dummies. Rafts. The radio traffic, the desperate calls for fire support, the panicked orders had been so specific. Magata had committed his reserve companies to the north, stripping other sectors. He had called in every artillery piece, every mortar barrage on pre-planned coordinates in the lagoon shallows. He had fired thousands of rounds at the jungle's edge, at shapes in the mist. And he had hit nothing. A younger lieutenant, his uniform still smeared with mud from a frantic night maneuver, speaks the unthinkable aloud, his voice barely a whisper. It was a trick. The landing, it was never here. Before the crushing weight of this can settle, a new runner stumbles into the bunker, his face ashen. He delivers a handwritten report scrawled on a damp piece of paper. It is from a coastal observation post 15 miles to the south, a post whose field phone line was cut hours ago. The runner had bicycled through jungle trails. Magata snatches the paper. He reads it once, then again, his knuckles bleaching white. 0500 hours. Observed large enemy fleet at Cape Torokina. Multiple transport ships unloading troops and heavy equipment. Landing craft continuous to the beach. Perimeter established. Enemy engineering vehicles active on the shoreline. Estimate 1 full division or more already ashore. Cape Torokina. Empress Augusta Bay. The real report, hours too late. A cold, sickening void opens in Magata's stomach. The naval battle he heard. That was Omori's fleet being lured away, distracted by a handful of destroyers and empty rafts. While he prepared for an assault on his front door, the Americans had kicked in the back wall. They hadn't just deceived him for an hour. They had stolen an entire night, the most critical night of any amphibious invasion. They had let his own certainty blind him. Now the strategic catastrophe unfolds in his mind with dreadful clarity. The Americans aren't at Torokina. They are here, on Bougainville, firmly entrenched at Torokina. They have their beachhead. And the airfield they will build there will put every Japanese position in the northern Solomons, including the mighty fortress of Rabaul, within lethal range of their fighters and bombers. The counter-orders he barks are frantic, a desperate attempt to reorient a force already spun in the wrong direction. But the initiative is gone, irrevocably lost. The psychological shock is paralyzing. For the Japanese soldiers who had spent the night in fighting holes facing the lagoon, the news is a slow-acting poison. They feel it not as a defeat in battle,
but as a profound humiliation. They were not outfought, they were outthought. They had aimed their rifles, called down their artillery, and prepared to die for a beachhead that existed only in the static-filled air. The sun climbs higher over Bougainville, illuminating two starkly different realities: the bustling, purposeful American expansion at Torokina, and the confused, demoralized silence at Coromokina. The ruse is over, but its consequences are just beginning to march, with grim inevitability, through the jungle.